Hello everyone, welcome to a new book review. Today I'm reviewing The Impossible Fairytale by Han Yujoo. The Korean title is 불가능한 동화, and it was originally published in Korean in 2013, with the English translation following in 2017. The English translation was by celebrated translator Janet Hong. The writer, Han Yujoo, has an interesting background. She studied German literature at Hongik University, Hongdae, and then completed a master's degree in aesthetics at Seoul University, one of the most prestigious universities here in Seoul. Han is also an accomplished translator herself, having translated books by Jeff Dyer and Michael Ondaatje, and she even runs her own micro press focusing on experimental fiction called Ulipo Press. In recent years, I believe she's been a teacher at the Seoul Institute of the Arts, as well as Korea University's Department of Creative Writing. The Impossible Fairytale is her first novel, and I'm happy to say it's a very striking piece of work. It's her first full-length work translated into English, but she does have a short story available in the Future of Silence collection, which is also well worth tracking down. And the novel's translator, Janet Hong, has built up an incredible body of work over the last few years, encompassing novels, short story collections, and graphic novels by writers such as Ha Song-ran, An Ko, and Hong Yeon-shik. And this English translation was published by Tilted Axis Press, a small printing press created by Deborah Smith, who's the young acclaimed translator of The Vegetarian by Han Gang. And Tilted Axis is a not-for-profit, quote, on a mission to shake up contemporary international literature. Tilted Axis publishes the books that might not otherwise make it into English for the very reasons that make them exciting to us: artistic originality, radical vision, and the sense that here is something new. And The Impossible Fairytale is a great example of this goal, as it's a very original book. It was nominated for a National Translation Award in 2018. It won a Literature Translation Institute of Korea Translation Award and was also a finalist for the PEN Translation Prize in 2018. So it's a very prestigious book that made waves at home in Korea and continued the trend that's been ongoing for several years now of Korean novels making a big splash internationally. But what's the novel actually about? So it has an engaging and unusual structure and is generally quite challenging in various ways. The first half of the novel is a primarily traditional narrative. We're introduced to two middle school girls who are about 11, 12 years old. The year is 1998. Mia lives with her mother. She has some kind of issue with her father, which isn't specified as the story begins, but is essentially a loved child with a relatively easy middle-class life. The other girl is just referred to as the child and goes unnamed throughout the story. She has an unstable home life, and it quickly becomes apparent that she's quite damaged. The story contrasts their two lives, and there's a growing sense of danger and unease. One of the girls has quite disturbed behaviour and begins to act in increasingly dangerous ways. At the halfway point, an extremely violent and transgressive act occurs. It seems like the novel will continue in a certain direction. A plot has been set in motion. However, here the novel makes a sharp pivot to something else altogether. It's an unconventional approach that some readers will no doubt find off-putting, but what is Han Yujoo doing here, and where does it take the rest of the book? The next section becomes, in part, a reflection on the act of storytelling. Han Yujoo, or a character representing a writer, is introduced. This person reflects on why they write, what are stories, what is the act of creation. Then, one of the characters from the first half of the book appears in this new real world of the writer in the second half. This fictional character confronts the writer, challenges her. Why did you create me? Why did you make me do these awful things? It's very bracing and challenging, but also quite gripping and fascinating at the same time. A sense of dread lingers over everything, and the nature of this confrontation is tinged with horror. Han's writing style makes for a very uncomfortable reading experience. However, it's also very clever. The first half uses this technique that sort of mimics how young children think. Again, the effect is disturbing. You're inside the heads, inside the minds of these children. You witness their dysfunction, their fears, their hopes, and it all seems to be happening firsthand. It's definitely not an easy read, but it is absolutely gripping and compulsive. The first half almost has thriller-ish elements. Then, after the change, it becomes like a memoir, a writer reflecting on their writing life. Then it changes again. A fictional character invades this real world, and there's something horrific about this. It's very difficult to do this kind of thing successfully, and this shift in tone will probably put some people off. But Han Yujoo clearly has some significant themes she wants to tackle. It's also a book that seems like it must have posed some challenges to the translator. There's a lot of wordplay in the novel. The writer plays around with words and does all sorts of unusual things with text. Janet Hong, the translator, writes in an afterword that she was worried about capturing these effects in the English translation. This afterword is fascinating. It gives an insight into the struggles of translation. Ultimately, she says that her aim was fidelity not just to the literal meaning, but also to the spirit of the original text. My final thoughts are that I would recommend this to anyone who wants a compelling, challenging, and wildly creative reading experience. The novel is The Impossible Fairytale by Han Yujoo, translated by Janet Hong.